What's going on, everyone? Taylor Kyles here for CLNS Media, coming at you with another episode of Pat's Daily, brought to you by our good friends at Prize Picks, the exclusive daily fantasy partner of CLNS Media, as well as Game Time, new friend of the show, and the best place to get cheap and last-minute tickets for Boston sporting events and any other events under the sun. Obviously, I am Taylor Kyles, and the Patriots draft is finally in the books. We were waiting for so long, and if I may say so myself, I think Elliot Wolf and company did a pretty good job. And to help me answer the questions that you all had about the draft, I am joined by my good friend Brianna Pirre, co-host of the Unsportsmanlike Podcast and one of the most fun Patriots followers on Twitter, one of my pals for a while now. Bree, how you doing, and how do we feel about the Patriots 2024 draft?
I am doing good. It's so exciting to be here with you. Like, thinking back 5 years ago when we both started doing this stuff, and now fast forward, here we are. This is pretty cool. Little full circle moment for us. I truthfully am pleased. And I don't say that as like somebody who's trying to be a homer and look at it with rose-colored glasses and just be like, oh, you know, great job. I love all these draft picks, because I feel like this time of year, a lot, not just Patriots fans, but a lot of fans do that.
Yep.
And then there's obviously the complete opposite end of the spectrum here, where they're like, oh my God, these picks suck. All of these picks suck, which that's crazy in and of itself. But I'm truly pleased. I think the biggest thing for me is the fact that they really addressed offense in this draft.
Yep.
Mike Reese said this is the first time, you know, all of the picks throughout whatever round have all been offensive players since the 60s.
A minute. Much needed, by the way.
Much needed. Like, it's important going into this new regime for them to be able to look at what the needs are and take action and fill them. Granted, like, no games have been played yet. We don't know how these are going to shake out, but the fact that they did that, the fact that they looked at this team last year and said, okay, glaring holes, and which obvious, like, we all know this, offensive line, receivers, like, this needs to get fixed. So they take charge, they do it in the draft, and not only do they do it in the draft, but I think they did it pretty well. I think all of the players that they picked for, especially for the receiver position, and the way that they got those two, real good.
Especially the value, Jalen Polk, not Jalen Polk, Jalen Polk. That's what I still got to make sure I'm getting used to. But they were able to get a better pick, get closer to the top 100, and get him. And then obviously the Polk that they ended up getting, the pick that they ended up getting, that's a tongue twister, for Jalen Polk, they ended up using to get Jayvon Baker. So like you, I was very impressed with this draft for the Patriots. You can argue maybe they were a little eager when it came to Caden Wallace, because I personally had him as more of a right tackle. But that's something where I feel like we're going to find out over time. If this switch to the left side actually works out for him, fantastic. And either way, I think it's kind of hard to debate that he was the best tackle on the market. So I agree. I really like this one. Last year, I kind of shot myself in the foot because I was really excited about the first three picks on defense.
Yeah, well,
I was still in Bill we trust mode here. I'm like, he's got a plan. He'll figure it out. Like, the defense is going to carry the offense. And then obviously things went the way they went. But I really tried to put my constructive criticism hat on. And other than the offensive line picks, which honestly I just feel like is a natural reaction because you want weapons. And I felt better about Leighton Robinson after they got Jayvon Baker. So I don't really know how you can be upset with this draft. I was really excited. Now, Elliot Wolf is on a little bit of a hot streak. Not only did he have a very good draft, they also extended Christian Barmore this morning, 4-year deal with $92 million max, $41.8 million guaranteed. Even more impressive, one, this is the most money in a contract for anyone not named Tom Brady in the Patriots era. Really shows that this team's going in a different direction in terms of keeping, developing, and keeping their talent around. And on top of that, Barmore's actually getting paid outside of the top 10, which I didn't expect.
I couldn't believe that. Could not believe it.
So is this one you're excited about? What were your thoughts when you first got the notification about this?
I got the notification as I was waking up this morning, and I was like kind of dreading today. You know, it's a Monday. start of a new week. It's a busy week for me on my side of, work and everything. And I saw that and I was like, okay, that might be pretty good. And then I saw the tweet that said, not even top 10 highest paid.
Yep.
And I was like, I don't know how this can get better. You lock the guy up and you have him on your team for the next, 3 years, 4 years, however long.
It was a 4-year extension, so I think it's 5, including this season.
Even better. And you do it without completely breaking the bank.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how you can look at this and not be happy about it. I don't know how you can look at anything that they've done with retaining these guys that they have this offseason and not be happy about it. I think if you are unhappy about it, you are forcing yourself to be unhappy about it because you just want something to be upset about. Because I don't know how you look at the people that they've re-signed, the 2 that they've extended, and say, nope, terrible job.
Mm-hmm. Especially when you look at one, Anthony Jennings. He and Christian Barmore were the guys that broke out. Jennings produced like one of the best edge defenders in the entire league. Like he was up there with Max Crosby in terms of defensive stops. You get him on a very affordable deal. And then you think of Josh Uche, obviously had a down season last year. You get him for less money than anybody expected, considering the fact he had a down season. Now he's on a prove deal, gets to show what he can do. But it sounds like he wants to be around New England long term. So speaking of that, all the success they've had in retaining their guys and with the draft in mind, do we think Elliot Wolf is going to be the GM long term? Personally, I feel like you are the creator of the Elliot Wolf laser eyes meme, so I think I may know where you're going to go with this. But how do you feel? Is he sticking around long term?
Again, pleasantly surprised. I was really, full disclosure, really afraid when the transition in coaching was made, and they said throughout the draft it's going to be Elliot Wolf, Matt Groh. I was nervous. Yeah. And I don't know if that's because the newness of it, the lack of Belichick for this draft specifically, and the implications of the 3rd round pick and everything. Maybe it was mostly because of that, but from then until now, they've done everything to prove that they can do this. More than anybody could have expected, I think. So I think it's deserved. People aren't going to be happy about it, but like I said, people are always going to find something to be unhappy about, especially when it comes to this franchise.
Yeah.
But like I said, I don't know how you look at the stuff that they've done over the last few months and not be happy with the trajectory of the roster building of the team itself. I mean, we'll see how it shakes out this summer, end of summer in camp, but I vote yes. I think it's a hard yes for me.
I'm on the same boat. And look, New England, I understand. Like, you're used to the dynasty. We're not there anymore. The doom and gloom with the weather here, I'm getting used to it myself. I was in LA for 2 years, and now I'm like, all right, I'm getting seasonal depression because
you got to come back. It's gorgeous out today.
That's what I'm saying. The sun's out. You got a good draft. If you look at consensus for the national reporters, usually the Patriots are getting D's and C's. They're getting B's and A's. So, hey, everybody, take a breath. Give the guys some credit and really think hard about whether you want to be upset about this draft, because I think there's a lot to be happy about. But on the other end of the spectrum, is there anything – I agree with you. I think that Elliot Wolf does deserve to be the long-term GM, especially seeing the way he interacts with Gerard Mayo, some of the changes he brought to the front office. I really think they're going in a positive direction, and those two work well together. Is there anything you think he could have done better, whether it was Calvin Ridley, whether it was maybe being more aggressive at the left tackle spot with someone like a Jonah Williams or a Tyron Smith, although we don't really know what the interest was with those guys. Anything that you think they did this offseason that you want to critique Elliot Wolf on, or do you think, hey, he's doing the best he can with the situation and the team he was given?
I mean, it's pretty tough to find something, but I'm good with the Calvin Ridley thing. First of all,
same.
The money just, I know you gotta spend for a high-end receiver, a high-end weapon like that. But like when we really look at it, how high-end of a receiver is Calvin Ridley?
Like wide receiver 1.
It's no knock to him. You got the bag. Good for you. But I'm not upset that the Pats missed out on it, especially if they did offer him a considerable amount and he still turned it down because he wanted to play in Tennessee and whatever the other reasonings behind it were. So I'm fine with that. If people want to take issue with that and losing out on a potential wide receiver 1 for this team, who hasn't really had a true top weapon in quite some time. That's fine. I understand. Not for that amount though. Not for me. Left tackle, yeah. I think even in the draft, taking the 2 that they took, the 2 right tackles that they took, and saying, oh, well, there is potential for them to switch sides and everything. That always is a little, not necessarily scary, but it raises a couple of alarms for me just because
it's a little worrisome.
I feel like the last couple of years we've tried that project and it's just been a revolving door.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe that would be it. But overall, like I said, it's tough to find something to be really upset about.
I agree. Like when you talk about Calvin Ridley, it's not even really the money as much for me, because Gerard Mayo said today, he was asked about, free agency and whether the quarterback situation was something that scared people off. He said, putting my players cap on, like, yeah, of course, if a team doesn't have a settled quarterback situation, it's going to be scary to agree to terms. But he also said it came down to money. But Calvin Ridley didn't just get a bag. He got a 4-year deal. However you want to slice it, if it's 2 years and then, 2 dummy years, whatever it is, this is a team that said they want to draft and develop. So it's kind of hard to offer a 4-year deal when the only guys on your team that got 4-year deals were homegrown talents in Christian Barmore and Kyle Duggar. And Barmore didn't even have that deal yet. And then whether it was a quarterback, whether it was not wanting to commit to him long term, it didn't really feel like that was a great marriage, especially when you're hearing that he didn't really want to come to New England anyway. Like, you don't want a guy dragging his heels to come here. I'm sure he would have been a consummate professional if things had worked out, but you don't want to force a square peg into a round hole. And then with the tackle spot, I completely understand. Like, I'm Mr. Optimist, so I try to look at, this can work because Chuks Okorafor did play left tackle in college. Now, it's been a long time since that was the case, but at least he's got some history there. And they did say that the only reason Caden Wallace played on the right side was because Olu Fashanu was on the left side, or Fashanu. That's another one. These draft names are
I've heard that name pronounced 900 different ways over the last week, and I still don't know which is right.
I'm starting to hear more Fashanu, and I'm like, what? That sounds like Fashanu sounds super American. I'm guessing that's probably the wrong one. So with Fashanu being on the left side, it does make sense. And then also Brandon Thorne, O-line expert, has said it's at least worth a shot to see what Caden Wallace can do on the left side. So
yeah,
Chuks Okorafor is comfortable there. You try Caden Wallace. If he's not a fit there, you still got a really good offensive lineman. Maybe he slides into the interior. He gives you options, and then maybe get a left tackle in the future. I don't know. This is year 0, but I do think they have some good pieces in place and at least a solid offensive line to start. Now, we will get into your mailbag questions, but first, quick word from our friends at Prize Picks. Be right back.
Get in on the playoff action and win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks, as you and the world's best players take the game to a new level during basketball's postseason. You can win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000 with basketball and hockey entries today on Prize Picks, America's #1 fantasy sports app. Prize Picks is the best way to get action on sports in more than 30 states across the country, including California, Texas, and Georgia. I personally love Prize Picks because they're super easy to use, easy to navigate, and they offer injury insurance, so your entries stay live even if one of your players gets injured. Quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of players and stat types are what make Prize Picks the #1 fantasy sports app. Download the app today and use the code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. That's code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy.
All right, now let's get into some of these mailbag questions. First, this one's for you. We all know Taylor's favorite Patriots draft pick was Jayvon Baker, guilty as charged, other than Drake May. They're close, but the value there I thought was solid. But who was yours, Bree, apart from May? And secondary question, is Cole Strange's tenure possibly coming to an end, likely tied to the selection of Layden Robinson?
Okay, first one, sorry to disappoint, but I'm going to go with the same pick strictly because of his comments afterwards.
Oh yeah.
I love the attitude. I love the personality. This entire draft class seems like they've got a little bit of nasty to them. That's going to, I think, really help this locker room. And then you got the high energy guys that are already there, like Bourne, Peppers, guys like that. So I have there's nothing in my brain that says they're not going to fit and they're not going to mesh with those guys. But the wheelchair comment, I mean, You know the meme where it's like, oh, this is typical for a quarterback to say, a tight end to say. This is so wide receiver coded. It's ridiculous. It's crazy.
I remember the first thing you said where I was like, all right, I need to be locked onto my keyboard. Like usually I say like, I'll give a general idea of what the guy said because I'm not good at transcribing. I'm still young in my journalism career. But after he said that he was going to kill anyone on the other side of him, which by the way has been scrubbed from the transcript and the video. You cannot find it anymore. They were like, yeah, okay.
Maybe we shouldn't say that.
As soon as that one came out, I was like, I need to be writing down every word this guy says. He's a beast. But the thing is, I understand that sound coming off as cocky. Like, he is a young player. He hasn't done anything in the league yet. If you watch his tape, you understand why he talks like that. This is a guy who, there was a busted coverage on some play. He was running like 40 yards untouched, and he literally blew a kiss to the opposing sideline.
Oh, I love
and his play backs it up. Like, he's good at the catch point. He embarrasses. Like, there's rude route runners where you can tell they're just trying to embarrass people by getting them to like flip over themselves or just putting them in another stratosphere. That's the kind of guy Jayvon Baker is. So looks like we're in agreement. I cannot wait to see what he does on the practice field.
I love that.
Edge. Like, we got nice guys all over the wide receiver core. You got, the uncle type personality, and Kendrick Bourne is always firing people up and dancing. But Jayvon Baker is going to be that dude who is like, no, I'm not taking any bullshit. Like, I'm going to, especially against Christian Gonzalez, who's kind of quiet. I'm bringing my popcorn to training camp. That's all I'll say. All right. Barring an injury to Jacoby Brissett, is there any other scenario where you think Drake May should become the starter? And how many games do you predict Drake May starts as a rookie?
Interesting. I'm torn on where I stand on this one.
Okay.
Because I don't. Yeah, no, now that I think about it, I'm going to talk myself into it. Yes, Jacoby Brissett's going to start. I do think they're going to do like true quarterback competition in camp, but I think ultimately, Drake May's 21 still. Right. Like, he's still a baby. Lot to learn, and there's the reason why they brought Jacoby in. They, said from right after the Super Bowl, basically, the plan is bring in a vet, draft a quarterback at 3. If he needs to sit a year, so be it. I don't think him sitting and learning is the worst thing in the world. And I don't think just because you took him with that 3rd overall pick means he needs to start right away. If there's some development that needs to be done, especially with the footwork, which has been the big thing around him this entire process. I'm fine with that. Even if it's not for the full season, even if, you look at this season and you already know going into it, okay, playoffs, probably not. If Jacoby can get you anywhere around 500, that's successful. Mm-hmm. But then you also saw what he did with the Browns a couple years ago. So like crazier things have happened. And then maybe, Drake May comes in and finishes off the last couple of games of the season. Sure. Get him that experience, get him that in-game experience, the welcome to the NFL stuff, and then lock and load next year, full go. I would be totally fine with that.
Do you have a number of starts in mind?
Let's say 4, 3 or 4.
Okay. You know what? I'm going to double that. I'll say 8.
Really?
8 games. Here's my thinking. 1, I love Jacoby. I don't know if he's going to be healthy for
yeah, there is that.
17 games in the schedule for like 9 games. I'm just not sure he's going to get there. If he ends up getting hurt, I just don't think Drake May is going to get his job back. I really don't. And like you said, the footwork is an issue. It's more consistency with him. Like, there's things that he's going to just need to improve with reps, like learning what he can and can't do, where he does those crazy things off script where like he'll throw the ball while he's being brought down. And sometimes it turns into this crazy play where it's like, he has the left-handed touchdown. He had one Duke, it's in overtime where it's for the game winner. He runs up, probably shouldn't have, but saw a guy in the back of the end zone, flicked it to him. Like, he's going to need to learn when he can't do that. Against Miami, he did the same thing and almost got picked off. But then you got things like processing, where like how quickly he reads the defense, not going through things too quickly. Those are things you just got to learn with time. But if you can get his accuracy under control a bit and just throw with some level of, again, consistency, I don't really think there's a reason to start Jacoby Brissett. I think Alex Van Pelt, you saw it last year with all the offensive tackles and all the quarterbacks that they had to play. He knows how to play with quarterbacks. This is a guy who wants to run the ball, who wants to dial up play action to take the top off of defenses. I don't think, especially whether it's Jacoby or Drake, I don't think either of these guys are going to be put in a position where they're dropping back like 40 times a game and the entire game is on their shoulders, unless obviously things get off the rails. I don't think the defense is going to do that for them. So I do think that I wasn't so sure, honestly. I'm warming up to the idea, but hearing that it's going to be a true competition, I think that we see Drake start a decent amount of games. Because one, I think if he has a strong camp in preseason, it's going to be like a Mac Jones situation where, obviously Cam kind of shot himself in the foot by not being available for that Giants joint practice. But Mac didn't let a pass hit the dirt. And it was like, all right, yeah, nope, this might be our guy. We're just going to roll with him because he's shown us. And I also think Drake may has the mental toughness where he'll take his licks. He may have some downs, but we saw it at UNC where he didn't have a good offensive line. He didn't have a good supporting cast. And not only did he elevate the talent of those around him, but he would, as Mayo said, he'd get beaten to a pulp and still get up and showed that toughness.
Yeah.
So that's my bold prediction. He starts 8 games.
Okay. Interesting.
All right. We got next. With the draft being over, who are the priority targets from the remaining free agents? And I've actually got a list, a little cheat sheet for us here. So
okay, thank you, because who the hell is even left that's worth
I wasn't
talking
gonna picture
about?
the dark like that. That would have been, honestly, I had to look it up, so I was like, you know what? Let's just make it easier. All right, so the available guys, Ryan Tannehill, no, not going to happen. They have enough. They have 5 quarterbacks. I have a roster breakdown. I had to make an entire different column, and the only person in it is Joe Milton. David Bakhtiari. I mean, I know that they do need a left tackle, and obviously he fits what they're looking for. He's with the Packers, but at one, he's rarely healthy, and I just think they'd rather go with the guys they have in-house right now, and if anything, go with Caden Wallace. Any thoughts on those 2 guys?
I mean, give me prime David Bakhtiari. If he, for whatever reason, could do the Aaron Rodgers method of therapy and come back and be in, his level of play, I would say you do that yesterday. Yeah. But I
don't think he's got a witch doctor, Andy. So
no, I don't know, and I don't necessarily know if he wants to go down that Rodgers road either. I don't know. I'm looking at this list and there's a couple names.
There's one that stands out to me, honestly. So I know people are talking about Justin Simmons and Xavier Howard, and I don't think anybody's talking about Jamal Adams. But my thing with that is Gerard Mayo said that he feels comfortable with some of the young guys making 2nd and 3rd year leaps. And we know this is a team that wants their young guys to compete. If you bring in X Howard, if you bring in Stefon Gilmore, if you bring in Justin Simmons, one, I don't think they're bringing in a safety who would actually start because you already have Peppers and Duggar. Martin Martin's going to have a hard enough time getting on the field. I think you want him to be able to see, all right, can this guy develop in year 2? Things looked a little fast for him last year, but he's super athletic and he is a smart kid. So if you bring in Justin Simmons, you're basically putting him on the bench. And I don't really think that's a great idea. With X and Stefon Gilmore, you got Alex Austin, you got Isaiah Bolden, and now you have Marcellus Dial. Those are all guys who I think should be competing for that outside corner spot, assuming maybe John Jones and Marcus Jones battle it out for that slot cornerback spot. So I think you're better off just seeing what the young guys can give you. And if you think there's still problems, then you sign one of those guys later in the summer. What do you think?
Yeah. This entire offseason free agency, I'm surprised Justin Simmons hasn't been picked up by anybody at all. It doesn't make sense to me. I'd be cool with that, but like you said, it's kind of an oversaturated position right now.
Yep. And
if the mindset of this coaching staff is let the young bucks go in and get, work for it, get it done, it doesn't necessarily make sense. Xavier Howard, really good. I don't know. It doesn't entice me as much as I thought it would. Mm-hmm. Jamal Adams, absolutely not.
No.
Absolutely
I think
not.
we both know why. There was that crazy ass comment he had last year.
Hard no.
Reporter. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
I was just like, all right, I don't even think he's a great player anymore. I think he's fine. But after that, I was like, no, this dude has lost his damn mind. And you know what? If Mac Jones were in the AFC East, I'd feel better about Xavier Howard because he has Mac's number. We have seen that several times. But yeah, I'm not too high on either of those guys. Let the young guys complete. I completely agree. Only guy that stands out to me here is J.C. Jackson. Gerard Mayo acknowledged they still have a spot open for him on the roster. He said, another year off the ACL injury. I think that is significant because he definitely wasn't as fast as he was last season. I also feel like just all the drama that was around last season kind of maybe just might have put him in a bad headspace. We know he ended the season and it had to do with his mental health. So if he can get that in check, if he can feel healthier and maybe get some confidence and swagger back, I'd be all for JC Jackson, especially because you probably wouldn't expect him to be a starter unless he showed you that he was that guy. Maybe it's like a, third, fourth string boundary corner. I'd be all for it.
What version of JC Jackson are we going to get if that's the case? Are we going to get the JC Jackson of last year or the year prior in LA where couldn't catch a cold? Like, just granted injuries, I understand that, and off the field things, but I just don't know if at this point, unless he's going to take vet minimum and say, I'll just take what you give me and work my ass off in camp, whatever happens, happens. If that's his mindset, sure.
And he does have a lot of leverage, so I think you're kind of dead on. I feel like that's probably
right.
What he's going to settle for.
Right. I mean, it's not like he can be like, oh, well, look what I did for you last year when I came in and I did this, I did that. It's actually quite the opposite.
Yeah.
So if he can get himself right and if he can get back in the right mindset, I'm not opposed to it at the right price. But if he's commanding more than vet minimum, then I hard pass.
I agree. And I do think that having Christian Gonzalez and John Jones helps because then you can play
a healthy Gonzo too.
Right.
Like
healthy Gonzo.
I feel like we forget we had basically an entire season without him after 3 games of looking like the next superstar stud out there.
Defensive rookie of the month in his first month in the NFL. That was so good. But I do think then you play the matchup where Gonzo goes on the number 1, then JC can go on that big body kind of wide receiver that he thrived against, or where I feel like he was doing his best work. So yeah, most of these free agents, no thank you. JC Jackson on a veteran minimum, that's pretty enticing.
Yeah.
All right, we got a few more questions to answer, but first, quick word from our friends at Game Time. Be right back.
With the NBA playoffs in full swing and the Celtics looking like the best team in the East, I'm trying to go to a game so I can witness their greatness in person. And to get those tickets, I'm going to be using Game Time, an authorized ticket marketplace of the NBA, which makes getting playoff tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to the tip-off, with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. Buying tickets on Game Time is extremely easy. All you have to do is click on the team that you want to watch, browse through the different options for dates and seating. Then you can filter through things like price and where you want your seat to be, as well as how many people you're going to be bringing with you. And they have a very cool feature where you actually get a panoramic view of the seat you're going to purchase. From there, if you have Apple Pay, it can be as easy as one click and you're all set. I also love the last minute ticket deals because if you're trying to save a couple dollars like me, they can make the experience of buying a ticket a little less stressful so you don't have to spend quite as much as you would with other services. They also have other events that you can go to, like comedy shows, music events, and certain things like that. I'm personally a big fan of comedian Jeff Arcuri and definitely want to see him while he's in Boston. And I love the lowest price guarantee and event cancellation protection. So if last minute you decide you may not want to go to the event or something comes up, you're all good. You can save up to 60% by buying your tickets last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, or anything else that Game Time offers. Your purchase is also covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticket industry. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms applied. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed.
And one more player that we didn't touch on very much was Stefon Gilmore. Kind of acknowledged him. I'm all for Gilly coming back, but again,
never
this is
say
one of those where, right. If it's at the end of the summer and they really need the veteran depth, sure, but I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. Just wanted to acknowledge that. All right, we're going to get a couple more questions in. This is kind of a fun one. Do you think that prioritizing slightly slower receivers with better production increases Tyquan's chances of nabbing a roster spot since he brings a different skill set? Now, personally, my projection for the wide receiver core Kendrick Bourne, Pop Douglas, KJ Osborne, although I think he's kind of fringe in a competition with Jalen Reagor and Tyquan Thornton. Obviously has a leg up on those guys. And then Jayvon Baker and Jalen Polk are my guys. But what do you think?
I think Tyquan's out.
I
think he's out. My biggest thing, I completely agree. Skill set is different from the bulk of the people in this receiving core, and it's a skill set that they need. Him specifically, your best ability is availability, and he doesn't have it. And then when he is on the field, I mean, he flashed in a couple games his rookie year, and then he got hurt. And then last year, I mean, he was a healthy scratch however many times, and then he got hurt, and then he was shut down, and blah, blah, blah. You know, it felt like it was always something. I love the speed. I would kill for them to have a speedster, a legitimate real burner on this team. I just don't think he can stay healthy. I don't think he can stay on the field. And at this point, there's too many mouths to feed, and you can't, just because he's fast, you can't just say, yeah, here you go.
Yeah.
Same kind of goes with Juju. I know the money is a little different, and, cutting him or trading him may not be possible. His cap hit is what, like seven something this year?
They're going to have to eat some dead money even if they trade him. I think they still need to eat some. If they cut him, I think it's more money than that. But they have money, so.
Tyquan specifically, like, I have in my little notes right here, I have two names in my little odd men out category. Tyquan is one of them, and then the other is obviously Bailey Zappi. But and it's a bummer because when Tyquan was drafted, we kind of all looked at it like, okay, speed. Yep. We have it now. He never was going to be, Randy Moss in terms of long, slender receiver, but like you hoped that even just a fraction of that, and we never really got it. So unfortunately, to answer this question in a completely long-winded response, no, I don't think it's going to help him. I just don't. I think we're past the point of just looking at that skill set and saying, okay, we need it, so we're going to keep you. There's layers to it at this point.
Yeah, I don't even think it was so much even that like these guys are slower. I think they are still downfield threats, but I understand what you're saying. They're not Tyquan. Really, I think this is just a huge summer for Tyquan. I'm not going to necessarily say he's not making the team because he does bring a different skill set. That's completely undeniable. He did put on weight. So you're hoping, okay, maybe that gives him a little more body armor to keep himself safe and stay on the field. And then with Tyquan Underwood, I will say in Tyquan Thornton's defense, I don't think Troy Brown is really up to snuff as a wide receivers coach. And clearly the team felt the same way because he got demoted and moved to another position, and they brought in two coaches to help with that side or that position group. So if Tyquan Underwood can really get Thornton to maybe maximize his potential, we start seeing more consistency and he can stay on the field, that's where I think he starts competing with KJ Osborne, because as great as Osborne is, and he seems like a phenomenal person, you've got Kendrick Bourne as your veteran mentor, kind of, rah kind of guy. So even though KJ Osborne did get $3 million guaranteed, it's not so much where the guy's on a 1-year deal. So if one of your young guys really starts to emerge, or Jalen Reagor, pops off, and he's a guy who also gives you return value. Right. If you're not trying to keep a ton of receivers, I think at some point, KJ Osborne's not safe. Again, no one on a 1-year deal, in my opinion, is safe. Big summer for Tyquan, but just thinking based on what we know, he's still a long shot to make the roster. Although I put him on fringe just because he still does have that talent. Like, he's not like Juju, who I think has zero shot of making this team. Like KJ Osborne being signed, I felt like pretty much ended his chance of being here, especially they doubled it to receiver. You only have so many spots. So yeah, Thornton needs a great summer. Juju, I don't know what he can do to get on this team.
Year one tryout was not cutting it for me.
No, even though he did come on late in his last game of the season, but yeah, unless he pops off in camp, it's really hard to see him here. So not super familiar with Alex Van Pelt, given the wide receivers and tight ends taken. How do you think those picks fit his scheme? And will the offense look dramatically different than years past? Since I'm the scheme guy.
Yeah, I was going to say, you take this one. This is you.
So one thing that Alex Van Pelt said when he had his introductory presser in Cleveland, I went back and I actually tweeted this after seeing what the Patriots did with their draft. The draft made a ton of sense. He wants to run the ball, and he wants explosive gains off of play action. I think that fits what the Patriots have very well. Jalen Polk was one of the best deep threats, and Jayvon Baker. Actually, Jayvon Baker was, I tweeted this yesterday, he was one of like 7 players in the entire country who had at least 15 deep receptions last season, and he had like a 75% contested catch rate, which was the highest among that group. So he's legit. Like, this is a guy who, yeah, honestly, he did have a couple, like 2 or 3 deep receptions where there was nobody around him because it was a busted coverage, but he still had plenty of impressive reps where he's killing guys in his routes or he's going up and winning at the catch point. So he's a legitimate deep threat, and we already know Drake May. Just bombs a May is what I'm starting to call him. He is trying to take the top off whenever he can. It's all over his college film. Like, big plays and explosiveness are what he brings. And then Jalen Polk, obviously, from that Washington offense, where a really pro-style offense. So I think the transition for him is going to be much easier than it would be for some other guys. And even though he isn't the fastest guy, he is good at getting into his routes, making sure he keeps himself clean, and just that catch radius is insane. So even if there's a guy on his hip pocket, he's still going to be able to win. And in the NFL, as much as we love burners and Tyreek Hill types and all that, more often than not, you're going to be making contested catches downfield. It's not too often that you're going to be wide open and it's just super easy. So I think these guys really fit well. Jaheim Bell was a really interesting pick. I didn't love where he was being projected to be taken in like the 4th to 5th round. I was like, I feel like that's a little rich because he's not super dynamic, although he is versatile and athletic. In the 7th round, I was like, hell yes, this is a lot more fun because he can play fullback. He can be that move tight end, and he can line up in the slot. He can play outside. I don't really think he should be there, but he can do it, and he's got experience at running back. And Alex Van Pelt, he doesn't get a reputation for it, but he's one of the more creative play callers and play designers in the league. So I'm excited to see what he does there. But I think all the weapons they got fit very well. And they said they wanted to shore up the offensive line. I think they did that very well with the pieces that they got. So I think everybody they took, it really does create that kind of picture of this is going to be a team that runs the ball, goes off play action, and gives you a lot of different types of looks with players moving inside out, backfield, all that good stuff.
So when I saw, I actually was still watching the draft broadcast when Bell got selected, and like an absolute sicko, because why are you watching that deep into the draft?
I don't even think I was watching at that point. I was on Twitter. I'm like,
and I believe it was Louis Riddick who was still on there, and he said that the Patriots should use him a la Kyle Juszczyk. And once I heard that, I was like, okay, you get him a good value, like your very last pick of the draft, and that's who we're going to kind of measure him up with what the potential can be. I'm cool with it. What I did want to ask you, though, is because I've seen this like crazy to the point where I unfortunately had to mute this person's name, and it's no fault of their own at this point because we all need to move on. But a lot of people are saying Polk is just N'Keal Harry 2.0. What do you have to say about that? I
say trauma is strong.
Right. I get it. I get the PTSD aspect of it, but like it's been a while.
Yeah.
We can
These
move
are
past
completely different players. Now, I will say Polk at this point in his career is not the best route runner. You definitely see flashes from him, but, he doesn't have a lot of nuance. It's kind of pretty straightforward what you get from him. There's little flashes of like, all right, there's some creativity. It's just not consistent. But I think Polk is legitimately like a quarterback's best friend. He's hyper reliable. I think he'll learn to get better separation. I spoke to him when he was picked. I actually spoke to his trainer as well. They're working on that, being better, being more explosive, things that will help his game and make him not only more consistent, but more dynamic as a player. But we're talking about N'Keal Harry. Like, N'Keal Harry was damn near 230 pounds.
Right.
Like, I went back and watched because I remember I was watching Keon Coleman and a lot of people were comparing them. And I'm like, all right, maybe just so I know I'm not crazy, let me watch N'Keal to see if maybe, I'm watching Keon Coleman with rose-colored glasses. N'Keal, even in his last season, when I knew he was training and trying to get better, he looked so slow. There was no burst. Even when he was efficient, it's like corners weren't threatened. He had that one trick where he could go downfield and catch anything. I don't think Polk is just that, though. I think he is a well-rounded player who just needs to add more tools to his arsenal. But yeah, geez Louise,
I know.
That's insane.
I think the reason why people say this is because they just looked at like the scouting report and saw contested catches, high point the ball, like those as his strengths. And at that point they check out. They don't do anything past that. And once they saw those, it was just like their trauma response was, oh my God, N'Keal Harry.
N'Keal and Devontae Parker. I feel like if you can make contested catches, it's like you are not welcome in New England at this point.
I get it. I get it because I mean, even the Devontae Parker thing too. And you knew coming in, he was a dude that had concussion issues, and it was just one more hit away from it being a factor on this team too. And unfortunately it happened and he missed time. But even when he was on the field, like once in a while, you're like, oh shit, that's Devontae Parker.
Yeah.
But then a lot of the other times you're just like, dude, I just don't understand why they can't get it right. Why, these guys, when they come to New England, it's like their brains just fall apart. I don't understand it. But I'm hoping that's not the case with this kid. Like I said at the beginning of the show, we'll find out over the summer. I'm not gonna crucify anyone, so to speak, before they even get into their off-season programs or anything like that. But I'm looking forward to it because it's just a little bit of a new offense. Even if I'm expecting it to be a complete overhaul, a complete new scheme, a complete everything. Getting away from the bare bones of like the McDaniels thing that I feel like even with Patricia, God help me with that. And Billy O, like I feel like still in the same frame. Van Pelt, I'm excited to see not only what he can do, but what he can do with these young kids. So
Amen. And if you want a better Jalen Polk comparison, he's not there. It is the player who was taken in 2019. I think that was 2019.
Yeah.
It's not Nikhil, it's Jacoby. Now, even his trainer was like, no, that makes sense because I don't think he's, again, as nuanced or as great of a separator as Jacoby at this point in his career, but he's got more juice. Where Jacoby was like, he's got to get a clean release off the line. That's when you start seeing him have downfield success, just with the nuance. I think Polk has just enough burst and vertical ability that he can just kind of do that on his own and threaten even further downfield. So get away from those Nikhil comps. Get them, stash them in a closet.
We just don't even need to do it anymore. We don't even need to do it anymore.
We don't need to do it. I don't think the team wants that either. All right, Bree, this was a great time. Thank you so much for coming on. That is not the right one. That's it. No. Before I let you go, please let the people know where they can find you and what great stuff you got coming down the pipeline that we should be looking out for.
So I am, for those who don't know me, I work for FanDuel. I am a part of their social media content creation team. So you can find me on all of their socials. Do a lot of TikTok videos, Instagram videos, things like that, breaking news and reactions and, all that good stuff. Also on Twitter at BSP_13, which is right there. Like Taylor said, he thinks I'm one of the most fun Patriots follow. So there's got to be some credence to that if he's saying it. I like to just make it fun and authentic. I'm gonna say some bad words. I'm going to overreact. I'm going to drop a fun meme here and there. So if you aren't already following me, would love to have you. And one last thing, Unsportsmanlike Conduct is the show that I co-host with my friend Gab, also works for FanDuel. We are every Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern. So tomorrow, if you guys want to hop on and chat with us, that would be great. We would love to have you there as well. And I think that's it.
As someone who takes this game a little too seriously a lot of the time, I always appreciate you giving a different outlook where it's like, nope, it's a sport. It can still be fun. We don't need to be so serious. I think we could all use that from time.
Like I try my best, to look at it that way, even though there are times where, if I have to be Debbie Downer about it, I'm going to be, because like I said, I'm going to be authentic about it. I'm going to be real with how I feel about the happenings. At Gillette Stadium specifically, but throughout all Boston sports. And I try my best to keep it funny, even if it's, not great. Because, there's comedy in misery. And I think we should look at that.
Man, we're going to close on that. That was beautiful. Thank you again, Bree, for coming on. And thank you all, as always, for watching. Now, take care of yourselves. Take care of each other.